I've spent a shitload of money on art school, art courses, and art classes, and I keep running into the same problem. How do I even know if it's worth the money? Today, that's what I'd like to talk about. Hi, I'm Chris. Welcome to Panels in Progress, a channel about making comics and learning through the process. And today's topic is all about courses. I'm going to share my experiences with them, and I'm going to try and give some advice on how to possibly determine whether you should pay the cost. Alright, I think there's something about art courses or classes or applications, whatever you have, that when we see this offer to us, we think that it's going to solve all our problems. We think that it's going to be the answer to all the questions we've ever had about art or making comics or making manga. We're thinking that this is the answer to how I will improve as an artist. This is the answer to how I finally will understand perspective. This is the answer to how to make my comic pages smack someone in the face. We think that this course is going to teach us how to market our comic and share it with the world, to share our manga with thousands upon thousands of readers, or even get potential buyers. We think this course or this class or whatever it is that they're selling is going to be the end all be all to all the problems we've ever had when it comes to art, manga, or comics. And I've definitely fallen victim to these types of sales pitches, the ones that it makes it seem as if all my problems and answers will be solved and life will be amazing if only I just pay for this course. And luckily, I have the answer. Today's video will be sponsored by... I'm just playing. I don't have a sponsor. If anything, my day job sponsors these videos and helps me continue to create them for you guys. Just wanted to throw that little joke in there because I thought it would be a perfect segue into this experience about me buying courses. So let's talk about art school first. I went to art school 4 years, and the thing about art school is I think it's great. It did provide a lot of structure, which is what I needed at that time. However, the problem with art school is that unless it's very, very specific, which most colleges, most art schools are not, I don't necessarily think it's worth it, because I spent a lot of time going very surface level on lots of topics. We spent, a couple weeks on coloring or color theory. We spent a couple weeks doing a character design here or there. A couple weeks in animation. We dipped and dived into a lot of things, but we never really got really deep into what I needed or what I wanted. Somehow we were supposed to take all these pieces and put them together, but it never clicked. It didn't work. I'm still in debt because of it. And yeah, I would say art school was a hard lesson to learn, a very expensive lesson to learn. The second one I want to talk about is ArtWad. This one I spent nearly as much time in college as I have with ArtWad. ArtWad is an application, and it's kind of a way of thinking. I tried it in its first iterations when it had first came out, and then I've been recently retrying it for the last year. So I have around 2 years experience with ArtWad, but scattered out through time. And I really like ArtWad's method of they teach you something and then you do something. So whatever they're teaching you, immediately they're asking you to do it. So it's do and apply. And I think that is really beneficial to me, and I like that method. However, I don't want to get too deep into what I think about ArtWAD. I do have 2 videos on my channel going over the courses and my thoughts, and I will also be making more videos about ArtWAD and my experiences thereof. So check out those videos if you want more of my thoughts on ArtWAD in particular. But I will say that I do like the learn and apply method. Proko has art of all kinds. So whatever type of style or type of art you're trying to create, Proko has something for you. And I specifically bought his course with David Finch about how to make a comic page. And I also know that Proko has the Marvel story course, but I can't speak to that one because I've only watched the free videos based upon that. And what I can say about the David Finch course that I took is that it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, but even in the videos that I did watch, there wasn't that many videos. I would not underestimate the value of watching an artist create a comic page while they think out loud and explain their process. I got so much from just watching David Finch draw a page and explain why he does the things he does than a lot of other courses, surprisingly. And for me, that was worth it. Paying the cost, I think it was like $80 or so at the time, was worth it to me at the time. The last one, and probably the more expensive one that I paid for all at one time, would be the Graphic Novel Pro course, which is offered from SVS Learn with Jake Parker. I did two comic book workshops with Jake, and then I also did the Graphic Novel Pro course. So I spent a lot of money just in SVS Learn for the 2 workshops and the 1 Graphic Novel Pro course. And I got a lot out of it. Mostly, I think the most important part from Jake Parker's comic book workshop was the feedback section. The fact that, yes, he's walking you through making a comic, giving you homework, and he's saying, I will look at your comic. Yes, it was an extra cost on top of the class, but it was well worth it because you're able to submit your pencils, your rough ideas, and he will draw over them, critique them, and figure out a way to make them better for your story. And I really, really appreciate that. It's not something that I've come across before, and it's something that I truly valued. I did it the first time I did his workshop, where I paid for the critique section and really got a lot of feedback out of that. And then the second time I took his workshop, I did not pay for it, and I felt like, man, I really wish I had. I was trying to save money, but really, if you're going to take a workshop where they're going to critique your work, then I would highly advise that you pay for the critique part, because you will get more out of that than anything else. I mean, direct feedback is always going to be worth its weight as long as the person who is giving the feedback is very clear about it. I'm just going to slide this in here. John Brinkley on his YouTube channel has been doing critiques of people's comics. It's amazing. Definitely check out his channel and get your comic critiqued over there, because right now he's doing it for free. But I don't think that's going to be that way that long, so not to take advantage, but while he's available, I would definitely recommend getting your comic critiqued. Now, the last part of that was the Graphic Novel Pro course, which is like 10 weeks of intense knowledge. And I actually like the formatting as far as you start the week off with several videos and some information. They give you homework. They're asking you to complete it throughout the week. And then you have an office hours where you can ask them questions and talk about that week's work at the same time. And I like that method, but I think the only issue that I had with that is that it was super short. A week time to do pencils and inks or colors or anything like that is just way too short. And I understand they have to kind of keep the course moving and you can work at your own pace, but having those teachers, Sean Crystal, Jake Parker, available to ask questions directly and look at your work, I think was worth the cost of admission. I also have a video about Graphic Novel Pro you can check out. It's not necessarily a review, but it's some interesting things, and if you want to know more about that, check that video out on my channel as well. So through all of that time, buying courses, buying classes, and joining an art application, I learned that what I value is structure, focused practice, and learning how to think when I draw. I think it's not enough for me to just see somebody doing something, like to know how they're doing it. And that's the one thing I think I keep coming back to ArtWad for, is that they do teach you, Antonio does teach you how to think when you draw, how to think about drawing. And I think that's really great. And then the focused practice, having that time dedicated to just focusing on that thing that you're trying to learn, obviously it's invaluable. And then structure for me is important, to know that there's a step A, B, C, and D. And if I build upon those steps, then eventually I will see the whole picture. Is something important to me. Maybe not important to you guys, but it is important to me. So the things that I would say were completely useless or didn't help at all would be repetition without purpose. Doing something just for the sake of doing it. Like at one point, and sometimes I still do this, when I don't know what to draw, when I don't know what to do, I just draw boxes and I rotate boxes and I draw cylinders and I rotate cylinders. And like, yes, I'm getting practice manipulating those forms and drawing those forms, but that's not my end goal. My end goal is to make a comic, not to draw pretty boxes. And that kind of ties into the content that's not aligned with my goals. Some of the ArtWad classes that I've taken, I think that they're going to help me with something in comics, but I can see how someone else making a completely different comic, it wouldn't help them. For instance, when I was doing the Intro to Environments course, I was desperately needing to learn how to construct a forest scene and an environment in a forest scene for my comic, and that was a direct correlation. But I can imagine that if someone is needing to do a cityscape and understand how to construct a cityscape, that landscape course would have been useless to them. And then of course, doing exercises without applying them. So sometimes while we learn these things, we can kind of get stuck in an infinite learn loop where we're just consuming tutorial after tutorial after tutorial, and we never actually move into the application of it or the use of it. I can't tell you how many times I watch YouTube videos of cool tricks, cool techniques, but I don't actually do them. It's like there's some sort of disconnect between me watching the video and me actually doing the video. I find it's much better to be working on my comic, be working on a manga, and need a solution to a problem that arises in the manga. Or the comic. Let's stick with the perspective metaphor or analogy, which is I'm making my comic and I realize that I need a different type of perspective. I try to draw it on my own, but I just can't figure it out. Now I need to go to the internet and find a course or a class or even a YouTube tutorial, a video, something that is directly related to what I'm trying to do. And then I take whatever that lesson is and then I try to apply it immediately. That has helped me more than anything. The next thing is something I feel like we all should know. It should be common sense, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Courses aren't universal. Every course isn't going to work for everyone. And the courses that work for me, or the classes that work for me, you might not get anything out of it. Or they might be everything to you, because we could have different goals, we could have different learning styles, different stages of where we're at. Like, some of the courses that I've taken, I don't know everything about making comics and manga, but there's certain things that it's like I'm already familiar with. So it's not necessarily as helpful to me as to someone who has never made a comic before. That's a different thing too. Like, is this course for beginners? Is this course for advanced? And I do appreciate that Graphic Novel Pro, they made that very clear that this is not for baby's first comic. This is for people who are already kind of familiar with comics, already know how to draw, because they're not going to teach you how to draw in that course. This is for people who have the pieces, like they have some characters, they've got some stories, they've got some scenes or locations, and they just need help bringing it together into a graphic novel or a comic format, which is very different from someone who has never made a comic before in their life. And I think it's just good to say that a course can be amazing. It could be the best course ever, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best course for you. And with saying that not every course is for everybody, I've also got to put this in here. Something that should also be equally obvious is that not every teacher is for everybody. Not every person can teach. Or maybe everyone can teach, but that doesn't mean that everyone can learn from their teaching style. This might have got really muddy, so if it got muddy, excuse me, but let me see if I can break this down a little bit. Sometimes a teaching style just won't work for you. Sometimes it could be their personality. You just don't vibe with their personality. Sometimes it could be their voice. Maybe you don't like the way they sound. Maybe they're too loud, they're too energetic, or maybe they're just too chill. It could be that how they explain things just doesn't jive with the way you understand things. I'm going to use an example not related to art. When I was in the 6th grade, I had this teacher named Mr. Widener. And yeah, I'm going to say his name because it's been a long time ago. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's plenty of Mr. Wideners out there. If you're a good Mr. Widener, apologies. But if you're a bad Mr. Widener, then you know who you are and you know what you did. Anyway, Mr. Widener was my geometry teacher. And in the 6th grade, I had been doing really well in math up until that point. But when I got to his class, I didn't understand anything that he had explained. I sat in the front seat of his class. I tried to understand whatever he was saying, but the way he explained things was very dry, very monotone. It was very stagnant. And what I'll say is that because of his age, he always used the excuse of he had been teaching geometry for like 40 years and that he had so much sick time saved up that he could take off 2 years and be paid for it all. Like, he was a character within himself. But the problem is that when his students didn't understand, even though we were asking questions, asking for a better explanation, explain the formula in a different way, he refused to do so. He was so stuck in his method that he just wouldn't change. And I failed that geometry class. I failed that class one time, and then the second time I was hoping to get a different teacher. I still got him again, and then I barely passed his class by the skin of my teeth. I don't even know how I passed that class. I didn't cheat. I think I passed with a D. But that class had me thinking that maybe I'm just bad at math. If everyone else is getting it, maybe I'm just bad at math. And that wasn't the case, because when I got to Algebra 2, I did a little bit better. When I got to art school and I had to take geometry again, which, why the fuck am I taking geometry in art school? But whatever. I fucking aced that class in college because the teacher made the concepts so simple. He made it so easy to understand that it all clicked. And I'm saying all that to say that sometimes the course could be right, but the teacher could be wrong. And sometimes the course is wrong and the teacher is wrong. But you won't know that until you actually give it a try, unfortunately. So I would advise at this point, if a YouTuber or anyone is offering a course, make sure that you check out their free content, check out their free videos, and see, can I learn from this person? Can I understand what they're saying? Are they holding my attention? Because if they can't hold your attention on what's free, then I doubt they're going to hold your attention on the paid side. And that's even if they have something really good to offer. So as we start to wrap all this up, what are some questions we can ask ourselves before we pay for the course, before we sign up for an application? The first question I would ask myself, or I would have asked myself, is, does this match what I'm trying to do? Meaning that, does this course actually offer the things that you need to know? If you are trying to make your first manga, but you are signing up for a class on illustrated covers, how much is that really going to help you make your manga? I mean, it might, but the chances are pretty slim. Or if you need help coloring your comic, you need to flat it, you need to have it, you want it to be fully colored. Now, you intend to make your comic in a cell shading style, but the class you're about to sign up for is only teaching a digital airbrushing style of comic coloring. Those two things don't match. They're not going to look the same. What you're going to be doing in that course or that class is not going to be the end result of what you want in your comic or manga. Or I guess if we use manga as an example, you want to make a horror manga, but the course is about romance manga. How to make your first romance manga. Like, you're in the wrong course. Like, if you want to make an action manga and you're learning about how to make a romance manga, there's going to be some overlap, but probably not enough. And then now your action story has way too much romance. Then what are you going to do? I don't know. The next question I would ask myself is, can I apply this immediately? Sometimes, as I've stated earlier, we learn very passively. We take in so much information, so much knowledge, so much mini techniques, cool techniques of how to do a certain thing, but we don't think about, can we actually apply this right now? Like, I'll use myself as another example, is that as I was making my short horror story, check out those videos if you want to see them. As I was making my short horror story, I needed to know how to do a wooded forest for a background. So the landscaping course, or the intro to landscape course on ArtWatt, to me was a direct correlation for that. It was going to teach me how to set up composition and landscapes in an outdoor setting, and that was the perfect segue into my comic. Now, there are some things that I have watched, some videos I've watched, that yeah, it's good to know this stuff, but I don't actually plan on using it right now, or it's not the right tool that I need right now. And though it's great to have access to all of this information constantly coming at us all the time, sometimes we can kind of get lost. Sometimes there's too much information and not what we need at that moment. So just make sure you ask yourself, is this something I need right now? Like, I would say if you are trying to make your first manga, your first comic, then a course that is teaching you how to make your first manga or comic, as long as it aligns with your goals, that seems like it's a perfect fit. Will I actually do the work is the next question. This is kind of a self-reflection. The will I do the work question has nothing to do with the course itself, has nothing to do with the class or the art school or anything. It has to do with you, and only you can answer this. Because sometimes we are very excited to start a course, very excited to learn something, but we don't necessarily actually have the goal or motivation to actually finish it, especially if we lose interest halfway through. Asking yourself honestly if you are going to actually show up and do the work is more important than all of the other questions, because if you're not going to show up and do the work, then it really doesn't matter the cost of the course. It doesn't matter if the course is useful, because you're not doing it. The most important course that you do, or the most valuable course that you do, is the one that you actually do. I mean, yeah, like I said, sounds like common sense, but I'm just gonna say it anyway, just for the ones in the back. And then my last and final question that I would ask myself is this worth the cost for where I'm at right now? This is specifically around the cost because cost is important to some of us. Some of us have the means to spend $100, $500, $1,000, hundreds of $1,000s. I didn't have the money to spend $150,000, but some of us have the means or access to do that. Remember, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be comments in the comment section that pretty much everything that you probably want to learn from a course, you could possibly find it online for free. And yes, that is true, but sometimes we want this information in one specific location from one source. Whereas if we are gathering free resources from all over the internet, sometimes the ideas can conflict with each other, or maybe it just doesn't go as deep as you want it to deep. Usually if I'm paying for a course, it's because I'm expecting to go all the way to the soul of whatever I'm trying to learn. Some supporting questions around this cost one could be, am I paying for structure or am I paying for info? Which kind of goes back to the free resources. The structure is provided in a course. You know the beginning, the middle, and the end. Whereas if you're just looking for information, sometimes a simple Google search could put you on the right path or in the right direction to where you're trying to get to. And the last supporting question would be, is this money better spent on resources to actually improve my comic? So that would be like subscriptions to Clip Studio Paint, better pens, tools, paper, whatever you need to physically make your comic or actually make your comic. Would that course money be better put towards that? And like I said, this is a question you can only ask of yourself. And to be honest, sometimes you might not have the answer to this question. For instance, there's a comic course that I know about. I'm not gonna provide the artist's name because I really don't know him. I just know that he has on Instagram a comic course that he's been promoting. He also provides tips and tricks and these short form video reels, but his comic course is $1,000. It's like a 90-day course. And $1,000 is a lot of money. It's a lot, and then it's not at the same time. It's like, if you're given $1,000, you're like, yay. But if you have to pay $1,000, you're like, oh no. You know, it's like, it's that weird number. But I can't decide about this course. Am I interested in the course? Yes. Do I think it could probably teach me something that I wouldn't learn somewhere else? Maybe. I guess the biggest thing that's holding me back on this guy's course is that I don't know him. Like, the video content that I saw for free, the short clips, anyone can be anything in 60 seconds or less. I don't know what his longer form style of teaching would be like and how deep those lessons would be. There's nothing to hint at the benefits of signing up to his course other than he'll teach you everything. And sometimes you don't need to know everything. Sometimes there's only one or two things that you really need to get you in the right direction. So at this time, I'm saying no to taking that course, but it's on my radar. There's lots of things I want you guys to take away from this conversation. The biggest being, don't overlook mentorships and feedback and critique groups, because I think that is the best thing that helped me as well, is having someone one-on-one look at my work, tell me what they think about it, and allow me to decide if I should take that advice or go on in a different direction. Making comics is kind of a loop where you start a comic, you're in this bubble creating it for however long, and then sometimes you don't really get the feedback you need because that feedback is a reader, and some reader might not take the time to say what you need to know. But having sections within the process where you can get feedback from another artist, a professional artist, or friends who might be artists. It doesn't necessarily have to be artists, but I do think that there's something that artists can see that readers can't. And they kind of have a shared understanding. But don't get me wrong, if a reader says that your comic is boring, it might be boring. I don't know. That is today's conversation. The one thing I want to know from you guys is share your experiences in the comment section below. What courses have you taken? What have you learned from those courses? And were they worth the money? I'm definitely interested to read what you guys are learning from and where you're learning, because at the end of the day, we all want to become better comic artists, better manga artists. So let's help each other out and put that information in the comment section below. If you guys are interested in my older comics or anything going on with the channel, go ahead and check out the links in the description below. And until next time, let's make some progress.